Hinrichsen. Jaquez Lewis. Kirkmeyer.
Excuse.
Kolker. Liston. Lundeen. Marchman. Moreno. Mullica. Pelton B. Pelton R. Priola. Rich. Roberts. Rodriguez. Simpson. Smallwood. Sullivan. Van Winkle. Will. Winter. Zenzinger. Bridges. Buckner. Danielson. Gardner. Hanson. Jaquez Lewis. Marchman. Mullica. Priola. Roberts. Rodriguez. Smallwood. Fenberg.
Excuse.
Danielson. Gardner.
I was told by the president it was okay if I didn't come back.
Hanson. Priola. Roberts. Rodriguez. Smallwood. Danielson. Hanson. Roberts. Rodriguez. Danielson. Hanson. Roberts. Rodriguez. Hanson. Roberts.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the call be raised.
The motion is to raise the call. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. And the call is raised.
That Senate rule ready for Friday.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pursuant to Senate Rule 21C, I move that the Senate excuse the members of the Joint Select Committee on Rising Utility Rates to allow them to meet while the Senate is in session.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it again, and that motion is adopted. Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we re-resolve into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of General Orders, second reading of bills.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will re-resolve in the Committee of the Whole for consideration of General Orders, second reading of the bills, and Senator Zenzinger will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. The coat rule is relaxed. Go crazy. Shoes, on the other hand, must stay on. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 83?
Senate Bill 83, Senators Winter F. and Simpson, concerning an expansion of a physician assistant's ability to practice and in connection therewith changing the relationship between a physician assistant and a physician or podiatrist from supervision to collaboration.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 83.
There is an amendment on the desk. We do not need to adopt the committee report because we have already done that. Will the clerk please read Amendment L017?
Amendment L017.
Senator Winter.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I move L017.
To the amendment.
This amendment ensures that any collaborative agreement that a PA enters into is signed off by a physician.
Is there any discussion on Amendment L017? Senator Mullica.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members. Looking forward to, again, having a robust conversation, a robust debate in regards to physician assistants and physicians and the oversight that comes with it. Members, this is, I think, pretty much the same amendment that we saw earlier. I think it was L009. And we were in the midst before we adjourned of talking about that, and I just want to really point out some of the things in this amendment, members. So what we're saying here is that that the collaboration agreement needs to be with a physician group, or a chief medical officer. What that means is we don't, well, for one, we don't know if a chief medical officer necessarily is a physician or isn't a physician. There could be some communities where that chief medical officer may be a nurse practitioner or maybe a physician assistant, and so doesn't necessarily ensure that that collaboration agreement is with a physician. You know, I do appreciate what the sponsors are trying to do here in regards to eliminating an employer. You know, I think that there was a significant conversation that we had in committee in regards to a collaboration agreement potentially being with an employer. When that is the case, we can see a collaboration agreement potentially being with a certified public accountant or the chief financial officer or a CEO who has no medical background. And obviously, working in the healthcare field, that was something that was very, very concerning to me. And so I definitely appreciate that we're going down this path. But I think that what we're still seeing problems within this amendment, and I definitely have spoken to both of the sponsors about my concerns with this amendment, is obviously that chief medical officer language is concerning when we don't necessarily know or have guarantees that that chief medical officer is a physician. But I think an even bigger glaring issue that I see with Amendment L017 is when we're looking at practice areas. And so when we're talking about physicians, and we're talking about physician assistants, or we're talking about DOs even, there are practice areas, there's specialties. So that might be an oncologist. A PA might be practicing in oncology. That might be emergency medicine. That could be family medicine. That could be a number of different areas, cardiology, neurology, pediatrics. There's a number of different areas that you can have specialties in. What this amendment is saying is that your collaboration agreement needs to be with a physician group, or a chief medical officer. What it's not talking about, and I would love for the sponsors to be able to potentially address, is it's not speaking to that practice area. And so, you know, what I'm concerned about, and I think what our job here as legislators is to do, is that we set the floor. Now, if there's an entity that wants to go above and beyond what we set, you know, that's their prerogative, and I think that we see that in Senate Bill 83 in a number of different areas. But our job as a legislature, especially when it comes to patient care and when it comes to you know, the sanctity of that and making sure that it's the best that it can be, you know, we need to set parameters that are best for the patient. And it doesn't make sense to me to have a PA practicing in oncology having a collaboration agreement with a physician that is an orthopedic doctor, which an orthopedic doctor focuses on bones. An oncology PA would focus on cancer, and there's separate areas. Or a cardiology PA having a collaboration agreement with that same orthopedic doctor. I think that when we look at this, I think that it makes a lot of sense for us to make sure that those specialties line up and that the expertise that's coming into play lines up. I think that obviously this bill is heavily focused on collaboration, and I appreciate that, and it's, you know, collaboration and supervision are much different. But when we're looking at that collaboration and a collaborative agreement, that agreement and that work should be done with providers that are in the same specialty area, not necessarily providers that don't have that same expertise. I would love to talk about this more, but I want to give the sponsors an opportunity to respond to some of that as well, and so I'll yield.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, to the suggestion that it shouldn't just be a chief medical officer, that should be a physician or a physician group. We are willing to accept that amendment. It's currently being drafted, and so we will be moving forward with that specific amendment. And then in regards to this idea that physician's assistants can just change practice at any moment in time, that's currently how physician's assistants operate. You can switch practices. You can go from being a family physician assistant to an oncology physician assistant right now. Because we are changing how they are supervised, we've actually increased the requirement of training. And so we are saying that if you are switching at a bare minimum, this is the baseline, it does not mean that you can't go over. We are requiring 3,000 hours of supervisory training through a supervisory agreement. You cannot enter into a collaborative agreement as a new physician assistant until after 5,000 hours, as a physician assistant switching practices until after 3,000 hours. This is actually an increase in training protocol that we feel comfortable with because we are respecting the integrity of medical training.
Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my good colleague, the senator from Thornton, for being so engaged in communicating with me and trying to find some reasonable compromise. I do want to highlight what's in statute today that we've managed to work under safely, and think what we're offering is actually incrementally better than where we're at today. By statute in 12-240-114.5, which is physician assistant's supervisory requirement, liability, and definitions. Under section 2 of that title, a physician assistant licensed pursuant to this Article 240, whose practice for less than 3 years is subject to the following supervisory requirements. The physician assistant's first 160 working hours shall be supervised by a supervising physician, pay attention, who works at the same location as the physician assistant. No reference to area of expertise or specialty. The physician assistant's primary supervising physician shall provide at least 40 hours of supervision, and the remaining hours may actually be provided by a secondary supervising physician who is designated by the primary supervising physician. I think the amendment we've offered makes sense, and again, I think builds on where we are today, and it's really about modernizing the language in the PA assistant. So I encourage an aye vote on the amendment.
So it's my understanding that a new amendment is being drafted, and so Senator Winter, if you could please withdraw this one so that we can introduce the correct one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I withdraw Amendment L017.
And we will take a senatorial 5. Senator Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L018.
But before you do that, we have to have the clerk read it. Will the clerk please read Amendment L018?
Amendment L018 by Senator Winter.
Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L018.
To the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is doing exactly what we said it would be doing in making sure that we are honoring the expertise that physicians have and that physicians need to be involved in the approval of a collaborative agreement. We were just making sure that we were honoring within this amendment that we had agreed to increase the number of training hours to 5,000 for new PAs, 3,000 when you're switching specialty. And so it's the amendment we were discussing is just drafted correctly to reflect those hours now.
Senator Liston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I'm not sure where I rise in this amendment, but I'm going to share a little personal history with you that I've been reluctant to share. But over the past several months, I've been fighting cancer, and I've had some procedures that were done to me that only a trained, highly trained, call him what he is, a highly trained urologist could do. And I can assure you, after having gone through a couple of these procedures, and I'm not talking about even oncology, is that I can't imagine that a physician's assistant, and believe me, I've worked with a physician's assistant. They used to be my primary care doctors, or primary care, but I cannot imagine that a physician's assistant, no matter how many hours that they have done trained, could do what this highly trained person in Colorado Springs could do before I underwent radiation treatment. I tell you that because he is the only person in all of Colorado Springs that is capable of doing this procedure, which I wouldn't, quite frankly, I wouldn't wish on very many people at all. So I have the utmost respect for physicians' assistants, but just speaking for myself, the procedure that I had to undergo before I could even go through my radiation is something that I can't imagine that a person could learn on-the-job training after 40 or 60 or 100 hours or whatever it may be. So I just tell you that to try and give you some perspective that while I understand where the sponsors of the bill are maybe coming from, let's be careful, and I'll tell you another story later on, but let's be careful that we don't water down inadvertently the highly trained physicians that are highly trained to do certain procedures, whether it's in the area of, well, all different areas of surgery. So I just use myself as an example that let's, in our zeal to broaden healthcare, let's not inadvertently water it down and somehow endanger inadvertently people that we're trying to help. Just a word of warning. Thank you.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to be crystal clear that this is not changing the scope of practice. So if a PA cannot do something today and this bill passes, they cannot do that tomorrow. So this is by no means changing what we are allowing PAs to do or not do. What we are saying is we want PAs to continue to do their work in a way that makes sense in a modern medical setting. So for example, if the good senator from Colorado Springs has a fantastic doctor that works in radiology with a physician's assistant, and that doctor chooses to move or retire, then that PA, under current law, can no longer practice because their physician that they are tethered to has gone. We are saying this physician who's been doing this work should continue to be able to do this work and do it in a collaborative agreement that is honoring the expertise of physicians, because a physician has to sign off on it. We are saying that they can continue to do this work because they've had that 5,000 hours of training. They've had the 3,000 when they first went into radiology. What's happening right now is when a physician moves or retires or changes specialties, we're not just losing that physician for that community, we're also losing the physician's assistant. So for example, in Lamar, Colorado, we have a physician's assistant that for nearly a decade has helped rural Coloradans get IUDs. That physician moved on, and she can no longer do what she's been an expert for 10 years. We are trying to create a path forward to let her do that. There's a physician's assistant at Rose Medical Center that has been working in medical assisted therapy, something that we've all worked really hard to increase access to. Her physician moved on, and now we not only lost that physician, we lost her expertise. So we are trying to create a path forward with guardrails honoring what physicians can do in a way that we are expanding access. Again, this does not expand the scope of what physician's assistants can do. If they can't do it today, this bill does not change that. This changes how there's oversight.
And members, we are speaking to Amendment L018. Senator Mullica.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the sponsors again. Definitely appreciate the work that we're trying to do on this bill, and appreciate the work of trying to remove Chief Medical Officer, and I think, want to be clear when we're talking about this amendment and we're talking about Senate Bill 83, the respect I personally have for physician assistants and the work that they do. I work with them on a daily basis, and I'm able to see that firsthand, and the importance that they bring to the profession of medicine and the role that they play. I think that when we're looking at what was Amendment L017, and we start looking at the differences in L018, while I appreciate that, and I'm trying to look at them simultaneously here while I'm at the well, I still see Chief Medical Officer referenced in a number of different areas. If you look at line 7, if you look at line 9, bless you. If you look at line 14, if you look at line 16 going into 17, if you look at line 20, 22, and 24, Chief Medical Officers are all still referenced in this amendment. And so I'm curious why that's the case if we are striking Chief Medical Officer from this amendment. I'm also curious, looking at Amendment L018, because it does go into a page 2, and members, there is a change here that I am curious, and I would love to get the sponsors' feedback on, and I just want to read this for you, starting on line 25, and this was not on Amendment L017. If we look at it, and I'll read it out loud for everyone, again, this is new language. Page 2 of the report, strike line 18 and substitute page 10, lines 25, 20, 26, and strike 3,000 practice hours and substitute the number of practice hours required pursuant to subsection 2 of this section. So again, I think what I believe this amendment was supposed to be about was supposed to be about requiring that collaboration agreement be between a physician group, and then they were going to take out Chief Medical Officer. I still see Chief Medical Officer in there, but then with L018 added additional language at the bottom, and I'm not sure how that relates to what the intent of the amendment was, and would love some feedback from the sponsors on why Chief Medical Officer is still in the amendment if we were trying to strike it, and that new language on the bottom of the amendment, starting on line 25.
Members, we're going to take a senatorial 5. Senator Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we have a good understanding. We are moving L0, I moved L018. We are debating L018. There is a subsequent amendment coming from the good senator from Thornton that will amend L018 that we are in agreement with that strikes chief medical officer.
So would you like to withdraw? You just would like to vote? Okay. Senator Malika.
To the amendment, thank you to the good senator from Alamosa and to the good senator from Westminster. So, members, I appreciate that, and I think that there was some confusion. I was under the assumption that L018 was going to strike the chief medical officer language, and I want to be clear, I think, in talking to the drafter and in talking to the sponsors, I think L018 really is focused on that last piece of the section, I think to correct some clerical errors around making sure that the hours are correct. And so, so I appreciate that, and I think that we obviously need to make sure that those hours are correct, and that's the language that came out of committee, and respect what the work the sponsors have done on that. I think that, Madam Chair, I'm not sure if this is the place to necessarily debate the hours. I think that the number of hours is a place of significant conversation in regards to Senate Bill 83 and what has gone into them, and I think the lack of flexibility in listing them out. But I do want to speak to L018 and what goes into that. And we heard the good senator from Alamosa. He referenced statute and referenced that we're not focused on practice area in current statute when it comes to physician assistants. I think that when I go back, and obviously I've had a number of conversations with physician assistants. I've seen a number of communications through my email. We sat through significant testimony in Health Committee, and one of the main things that we heard, and I think we heard it from the good senator from Westminster as well, is that when a physician leaves an area or a physician retires, that the PA is tethered, is tied to that physician. And we heard the example from, I believe it's down in the San Luis Valley, of a physician assistant who had been completing a procedure for a number of years and had expertise in that area and had actually trained other mid-level providers, and the supervising physician retired, and that PA was unable to do those procedures anymore for that community, and that was obviously a loss for that community, and I think was a reason that was given to bring Senate Bill 83 before us. I think that what that tells me, though, members, is that when we look at that practice area, we may not see a specific reference to practice area, but that with the current model, the way that we have it in the supervisory model, that PA is tied to that physician's scope and that physician's ability to perform the procedures and oversee those procedures. And, I think that what we're seeing with Senate Bill 83 is a desire to have some flexibility from those stringent ties to necessarily just the physician's scope, but be able to have that flexibility so that if a physician leaves, that there's still a collaboration agreement and that PA can practice at the top of their scope.
Senator Mullica, could we get to the amendment?
It is to the amendment, Madam Chair, because what we're looking at with this amendment, Madam Chair, is the fact that this amendment doesn't have practice area in it, and it was addressed by the sponsors, and they spoke to scope, and that is the concern that I have. One of the main concerns I have with this amendment is that practice area is not required to be aligned here. That we're going to have a collaboration agreement, and I mentioned this when L017 came out, and L018 is the same, with the only change being a clerical correction on hours at the bottom. But that when you have a PA, and the example I used, just a little bit ago, Madam Chair, was that when you have a PA that is practicing in, I believe I used the example of oncology, that I'm not convinced that it's appropriate that PA has a collaborative agreement with a physician that is practicing in, let's say, orthopedics. They're two different specialties, two different types of medicine. And when we're talking about collaboration, which is what we're talking about in Senate Bill 83 in a collaboration agreement, and we're specifically talking about who that collaboration agreement is with, Madam Chair, I think that it's appropriate that we talk about that those specialties or those practice areas line up. I think that when you talk to those who work in the healthcare field, when you talk to physicians who bring, I think hopefully we can all agree, a level of expertise to the care for the people of Colorado and their patients, that makes sense that those practice areas line up. When we're talking about a collaboration agreement, we want collaboration. We want the entities, and in this case, the entities being the physician assistant and the physician, to have that same expertise, or to at least have, to be in the same area when talking. And now in medicine, collaboration happens on a daily basis as it is already. You obviously can't be a jack of all trades, and I think many of you know I work in the ER, and we see a number of cases come into the ER, and you can't be a specialist in every single area. And so if there is a patient that you see that is outside of your area of expertise, you consult, you refer. And that's what we do in medicine. And so, it's one of the arguments I think that we can get to in the bill, Madam Chair, that essentially collaboration is already status quo in medicine. But I think that it's important when we're looking at Amendment L018 that we really focus on the fact that I think there's been good faith effort here, and I do commend the good senator from Alamos, and I do commend the good senator from Westminster in really trying to solve this. There are still significant issues here, and our job here is to make sure that we're putting out the best possible care for patients of Colorado. I want to be clear that in any arguments I make is not saying that PAs are bad. It's not saying that PAs or physicians assistants provide bad care. I think what our job here is, though, is to make sure that the people of Colorado and our patients are getting the best care possible. And I argue that physician-led care with that expertise is the best care possible. And so in working on this bill and in working on the collaboration agreement, which is what L018 focuses on, and we're looking at that collaboration agreement, which is, again, what we're focusing on, how do we make that the best that it can be? How do we ensure that when we're having a collaboration agreement, and that collaboration agreement is rightfully so and a good thing, being with a physician, how do we make sure that it's the best that it can be? And being with a physician may not just be good enough, or eliminating chief medical officer may not be good enough. I think, we need to look at that practice area, and we need to make sure they align. Madam Chair, I think there's a number of areas that we should look at L018. I think that, language ensuring that that physician is a licensed physician in good standing, actively practicing in our state is another thing that we should be talking about with L018. Again, these are parameters to put around to make sure that the people of Colorado get the best care possible. I commend both of the sponsors for the work they're doing, and I think that we have legitimate problems here to solve. I just think that when we're solving these problems, we need to make sure that at the end of the day, the policies that we're passing are going to be the best for our patients and the best for the people of Colorado. And so when you look at that, I think that in addition to making sure the practice areas line up, I think that I would hope the sponsors would consider and look at making sure that those physicians actively practice in our state, that those physicians are licensed in our state. I think that that's a big thing. I think that there is a legitimate concern amongst a number of entities that we are corporatizing medicine, and that we're, potentially allowing entities from, coming out of state and, trying to find a way to profit off of patient care, and as a medical provider myself, I think that is really disheartening. I think that it's very concerning, and that when it comes to patient care, the patient should always be at the forefront of everything, and that the dollars and cents come secondary to the patient care. And so when we're looking at L018, Madam Chair, I implore, I ask the good senator from Alamos, I ask and implore the good senator from Westminster to really try to look at putting some parameters around what we're trying to do here, and respect the fact that they've mentioned that they're willing to take out the chief medical officer language, knowing that we can't guarantee that the chief medical officer is a physician or not. I appreciate that, but I think when I look at L018, there is still a significant amount of work to do to make sure that we have protections in place and that we have parameters in place to ensure the best possible care. And I think, those parameters obviously involve some sort of practice lineup, so that the physician and the PA who have that collaborative agreement have same knowledge, they're practicing in the same area and can actually legitimately have a collaboration agreement. And I think that in addition to the collaboration agreement, I would encourage the sponsors to really look at some language around making sure that these physicians that we're speaking to in Amendment L018, that we are ensuring that they are licensed in our state, that they are actively practicing in our state, before they, and that they have no encumberment on their license, obviously, before they can enter into a collaboration agreement. And so I would love to hear the sponsors' take. I feel like I was a little long-winded there, but would love to continue discussions and hear the sponsors' take on some of the concerns I have on L018.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment 18. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. No! The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, can I get senatorial 5?
We will take a senatorial 5. Is there any further discussion? Senator, we've already passed the amendment to the bill. Is there any further discussion? Senator Mullica.
Yeah. Not getting very many smiles down here from the good senator from Lafayette. Yeah, so I'm not sure if this is crime. I think this is making sure our patients get the best care possible, and I'm prepared to stand here all night to ensure that. Members, we have talked that, and again, I want to give credit to the sponsors and the stakeholders. I think that there has been a lot of work and a lot of effort on that, and I don't want any of this debate to take away or to give any other indication that the sponsors haven't put in the work. The good senator from Westminster, who I know is not hearing me, but giving her huge kudos for the work that she's done, the good senator from Alamosa. No matter the debate that we have tonight on this bill, I want the record to reflect the work that they've done and the good faith effort that they've put in. And obviously, I think we're going to have time to discuss areas that and where we couldn't get to agreement, and that's fine, and that's what this building is for, and I think that's what we were sent down here to do. But I just want to make sure in the onset of this debate that it's very clear the respect that I have for these two individuals who serve their state with pride and have worked diligently hard on this and in good faith. And so I will say, though, there is a huge concern that I have, and I mentioned it when we were debating L018. And that concern, members, is that when we have physicians, there's a level of expertise with those physicians. We know the schooling that physicians go through. We know what they bring to the table. And members, I think that, with what we do in this building, I think that, again, our goal should always be to make sure that we're putting out the best. And when I say that, it doesn't mean that PAs or MPs or other mid-level providers don't provide great care. We know that. And many of us see PAs ourselves. Many of us serve with PAs, or at least I serve with PAs. And many of us see these PAs in our communities. And when we see that, and specifically, in the rural setting, sometimes, I've heard feedback, and I've heard feedback from the good senator from Alamosa, that sometimes that's all you have as a PA. But I still go back to the fact that there's expertise in physician-led care. Physicians actually go to school and are taught to lead. And we heard many issues in committee, and I've heard issues talking to the stakeholders. I've heard issues talking to the sponsors. And one of those issues, like I said, was the provider in the San Luis Valley. And I'm not sure if the good senator from Alamosa, if that's in your district or not, if San Luis Valley is, but
It is.
But I think it's a legitimate concern. And the good senator from Alamosa is lucky to have that beautiful part of our state in his district. Members, we have a problem in healthcare. There are pieces of our healthcare system that are broken. And I think that no matter what side of the aisle you're on, we can all agree that there's pieces that are broken, and specifically pieces in our rural areas. And we have to do better. And, I look at Senate Bill 83, and I think that there's been discussions with Senate Bill 83 that, if you go to the Colorado PA's website, it's insinuated that Senate Bill 83 will play a role in solving our rural healthcare problem. And I disagree with that, members. I think that we have legitimate problems. But right now, what I think we're seeing in Senate Bill 83 is we're seeing a butcher knife when we need to be using a scalpel. and that's no pun intended. I know that we're having a debate on healthcare, and but I really do. I think that when we're looking at trying to solve what are some legitimate problems in our healthcare system, and specifically in our rural healthcare system, we need to really take a focus on that, and not necessarily just throw the baby out with the bathwater. We know that the physician-led care, we know what physicians bring to the table, and we know that by having them in the equation, that's better for our patients. Now, I want to be clear, members, that doesn't mean that physician assistants shouldn't be a part of that equation. They absolutely should be part of that equation. But physician-led care, I mean, it's in the name, members, and we brought this up a little bit in committee, and PA stands for physician assistant, and means to work with that physician, knowing that that physician has that oversight, meaning that that physician has that supervision, and yes, works in collaboration within that realm of oversight and within that realm of supervision. We heard, members, in committee what are legitimate issues within our system. We heard about administrative burden. We heard about the amount of paperwork that PAs and physicians have to go through just to have that supervision agreement. We heard that sometimes, especially in a rural area or a taxed area, that administrative burden makes it a place where practicing is hard. We also heard about when a physician leaves, and a physician leaves that rural area. And look, that's a real issue, and I don't think anyone's denying that. And we mentioned it and we debated it in when we were talking about L018, and the fact that that when a physician leaves, that PA is tied to the scope of that physician, is tethered to the scope of that physician, and that when or if that physician leaves, that it becomes incredibly hard in certain settings, specifically in a rural setting, for that physician assistant to continue providing those services. And look, members, I wholeheartedly agree. I think that is a legitimate issue, and it's an issue we should focus on. And I want to be clear with the members that it's an issue that we attempted to focus on. It is an issue that we attempted to find solutions, and and it's fine. I mean, we can think that this is bad behavior up here, and we can try to critique the debate that we're having, and that's fine. I really wish we did have that decorum where we didn't have to say things like that in this building, but this bill means that much to me, and it means that much to the people of Colorado that we're going to spend that time debating this bill, even if there's senators that think that this is bad behavior or leads to bad behavior. I do appreciate the sponsors and their willingness to work, and I think that hopefully we still are more than willing to continue to work on this, hopefully in a way where there's not comments that are being made from the gallery of fellow senators. But really going back to, looking at what we were trying to do to solve this problem, and some of the solutions that were put forward, to solve those problems. One of those solutions involved changing the dynamic on how physicians and physician assistants worked. And so that problem that we had and that we heard about, that when a physician leaves an area or a certain area, what does that mean, and what does that mean to that physician assistant's practice? One of the concepts that was proposed was being able to allow that physician assistant to have a relationship with multiple physicians. And, and right now that physician assistant can have a relationship with one physician. And we heard the arguments against that, and we heard, the things that come from that and the harm that could potentially come from that. And so looking at that solution, looking at a solution where that physician assistant can have a relationship with multiple physicians, I thought was a solution worth exploring, and definitely discussed this concept with the stakeholders, discussed this concept with the sponsors of the bill, and I think one of the responses that I heard was response to administrative burden. And again, I think what is a legitimate problem, I think in the realm that we have. And again, I think giving us an opportunity to focus on what is a legitimate problem, rather than throwing that baby out with the bathwater. Let's hear where those problems are, let's find those solutions, and let's solve that, and let's make sure that rural Colorado and the people of Colorado have adequate access to care. And so what that concept was, members, again, was to change the model to allow for those physician assistants to have a relationship with multiple physicians. And so if you have a physician like the case that we heard in the San Luis Valley, and the physician that was overseeing your procedure to place an IUD, that if that physician left, that you would have the ability to have another relationship with another physician, and then another relationship with another physician if you needed to for maybe another procedure or another area. And so, again, I think some of the concerns we heard were around the administrative burden of that. But I think also one of the things that when we were looking at this, because again, members, we were trying to find legitimate solutions to this problem while keeping physician-led care. That was the keys. How do we solve these problems while keeping physician-led care? And in that, we even went so far as saying, can we look at seeing if that supervisory relationship can be via telehealth? We obviously we heard in committee from the good senator from Alamosa our issue in rural Colorado and having adequate number of physicians. And there's actually some counties that have no physicians. And that's obviously concerning. And so, and we obviously know Colorado Springs and Grand Junction and Fort Collins and Denver are more populated areas. And so really looking at that solution to say they can have that supervisory relationship via telehealth even, so that we can keep that physician-led care in the fray, so we could keep that expertise in the fray. And members, it was disappointing because the stakeholders didn't want to come to an agreement on that. And I think that those were legitimate solutions, and I think that we were trying to find solutions to address the concerns that we were hearing, and specific concerns to rural Colorado, where we know the healthcare system is broken and we have to do better. And when we bring those, legitimate solutions to the table, not to see them accepted, I think is obviously disappointing. And I think we're going to have, a lot of other time to to sit up here and talk about other solutions and hopefully debate what some of those solutions look like. You know, but I want the members here to understand that there's been good faith effort and good faith efforts on both parts, both sides, to really find a solution. And, you know, we had a bill several weeks ago around scope of practice and prescriptive authority. I believe the good senator from Alamosa was a sponsor of that bill as well, and we were able to find those solutions. And again, I think that speaks volumes to the work that the good senator does. You know, and I think that obviously this is a different bill and has, you know, many more moving parts than just prescriptive authority, but I still think has the opportunity to really thread that needle. Thank you. Yeah, no, you're just teasing me now. You know, but really, are we allowed to have water in the well?
No.
No? Thank you.
If you step away from the podium,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been waiting for that gavel all night. I just need just a sec to catch my thoughts. Thank you, Madam Chair. Much appreciated.
you
Thank
were
you,
talking
Mr.
about
Minority Leader.
needles, and I thought maybe you were getting ready to button this up.
Oh, no, I think we have a lot of discussion, Madam Chair. and,
Okay.
let me find my thoughts again. Madam Chair, we were talking about legitimate solutions to this problem.
In Alamosa and other places.
And the good senator from Alamosa has worked diligently hard on issues affecting his community, and I will be the first to say that they are lucky to have him representing them up here in Denver at the Capitol. He is very passionate about his community and is a strong advocate for them down there, and I admire seeing his work every single day. But you know, I was mentioning a previous bill that the good senator from Alamosa that he sponsored around prescriptive authority, and obviously brings, I think, a similar number of stakeholders into the room, Madam Chair, and how, you know, we were able to find that compromise, and we were able to find that needle to thread to really make sure that Colorado, that the people of Colorado were still receiving
Needle
the best.
that thread? You mean thread that needle?
That's the educator in you, yeah. Appreciate that, Madam Chair. I look forward to many more corrections tonight. No, I think that, obviously we have, there's more moving parts to this bill, and there's no denying that this doesn't just impact prescriptive authority, similar to the bill that I think we're talking about from several weeks ago. There's many moving parts, and there's different specialties. And, we were able to speak extensively on specialties and what that means and the practice of care. And hopefully we have, more conversations around that, because I think that plays a big role in what we're doing. But I think, when we're looking at this and we're looking at legitimately trying to solve this problem, and we see solutions being brought forward and solutions that directly address the concerns that we hear, that directly address if a physician moves away, that directly address, if we have administrative burden, and, not seeing those solutions taken. I think, it's tough because you don't disagree that there's a problem. I think we all recognize that there's a problem. The disagreement is the solution, and and to the sponsors, I fully believe that they think this is the solution, and respect that, and and know that we disagree, but hopefully figure out a way that we can find that middle ground. I think that there's still a lot to be talked about. And I've had these conversations today. I've had these conversations with the sponsors for days. And, and the stakeholders for days. And, I think that there's been movement on both parts. And, I think that you talked to one side, and I think that the starting point was supervision, and that's the line in the sand, and we're only going to take supervision. And you talk to the other side, and the collaboration agreement, and we're only going to take the collaboration agreement, and that's all we're going to take, and we want that collaboration agreement to be with whoever we want it to be with. And I think that you can see from the amendments, you can see from the committee work, you can see from the conversations hopefully tonight, even from amendments tonight, that there is still, the work is still being done, and that both sides, I think, are moving. And I think that you can see that. And I think that, L018, is a prime example of that. When we look at L018 and how it changed the bill, really addressing what was a major concern of mine in committee was that collaboration agreement could be with anybody, and I was able to share that in committee. I was able to share that with the sponsors. I was able to share that with the stakeholders, and I think that it was a legitimate solution. I hope that it was, being that it was addressed. But the idea that collaboration agreement, could be with a non-clinical individual was concerning. And so, in the work that we did in L018, I would say thank you to the sponsors, because I do think that we need to make sure that collaboration agreement is with a physician and a medical person. But again, I'm going to advocate looking at the bill, Madam Chair, that, when we change that language, that we make sure that collaboration agreement with a physician, that they're in the same practice area. I don't think that is a difficult thing, or a difficult thing to really look at. And, and it makes sense to me, when we look at that, to say, hey, if you're in this area of specialty, that the physician that you have a collaboration agreement have that same collaboration agreement. I think that, there's a number of areas in the bill. I think one of the big areas that I look at in the bill too is, and I brought this up with the sponsors, and I've brought it up with the stakeholders, and I've been very vocal about it, is the number of hours. And so in the bill right now, members, is, and sponsors, if I misspeak, please correct me.
After the amendment.
I'm sorry?
After the amendment. Yes.
I haven't moved an amendment, Madam Chair.
No. The number of hours after we adopted the amendment.
Yes, yep. But yeah, if I misspeak, please correct me. For a new PA coming out, there's 5,000 hours required of supervision, and I want to be clear, collaboration and supervision are different, and that supervision is temporary after the 5,000 hours. But that if that PA wants to change specialties, that to change specialties, they would have to go through 3,000 hours of supervision. I believe that's correct.
Yes.
And so when you think about that, we can do the math, but roughly 3,000 hours is a year and a half. I think that, if you're working full-time, 40 hours a week, a year is just over 2,000 hours. And so we can confidently say that 3,000 hours is a year and a half. I want the members to understand how complex medicine is, though. When we think about medicine, we've had time tonight to talk about specialties. And medicine is complex, and what goes into medicine is complex, and the training that goes into medicine is complex. And the amount of training is often determined by the complexity of the medicine. And so you might have a family physician, and that family physician, and we're speaking to physicians, not PAs right now, but if we look at a family physician, they go through undergraduate, they go through medical school, and then they would have to go through, say, 3, maybe 4 years of residency, and then obviously pass their boards. And so we can add that math up. We can say, if you're not the good senator from Denver, that maybe college is 4 years, not 5. If you have medical school, which is another 4 years, and so we're up to 8 years now, 8 years of schooling. And now we have to start residency. And we're just talking about family practice. I think that I'm looking forward to going into more specialties and looking at the details that go into that. But family practice, so we're at 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, and then we can say 3, oftentimes it's 4 years of residency. And this is, being a physician, no matter what level, is complex, but on the level of complexity, you can be up in neurosurgery, you have oncology, you have emergency medicine, you have family practice, and there's different levels, and I look forward to going through the length of the residencies. So you're at 12 years before you can practice as a family physician. 12 years, and I hope that the membership is staying engaged, Madam Chair, because I think this is a riveting debate. We're looking at 12 years just to be a family practice doctor. Let's look at neurology. I think neurology is obviously a complex form of medicine. So again, no matter where you start, you have to go to undergrad, and typically, I say typically, for some people it's longer, but typically, undergrad is 4 years. And then again, you go through medical school for 4 years. But let's talk about the residency for neurology. An additional 7 years. 7 years. Now, if we can multiply that in my head, I'm not very good at math, but I'm going to try in my head. If in residency, you're usually working more than 40 hours, but let's just, for argument's sake, use 40 hours a week. That's 2,000 hours a year. Multiply that by 7 years. That's 14,000 hours of residency post a 4-year medical degree to be a neurologist. And then you have to go pass your boards, which, from my understanding, I'm not a neurologist, I'm a nurse, are extremely difficult. And so what we currently have in Senate Bill 83 is we're telling a physician assistant, which, mind you, a physician can't go back and change specialties without going back to residency, and we can continue going over those numbers and the hours and the years for the physician. But what we're telling physician assistants in Senate Bill 83 is that you're able to change specialties if you're supervised for 3,000 hours. 3,000 hours, members, a year and a half. Doesn't matter the specialty. Doesn't matter the specialty. Doesn't matter the complexity of the medicine that's being practiced. That's not part of the equation. We're saying a flat 3,000 hours, and you can change specialties. Members, I'm trying to explain to you the complexity of medicine, and we know that there's different specialties, and that different specialties are obviously more complex. And I think that's relatively easy to see when we have such a vast difference in the length of those residencies. To be a neurologist, you have to be in residency for an additional 3 years. And for a total of 7 years. But as a PA, you can go into neurology, and you can practice in neurology with a collaborative agreement with Senate Bill 83 so long as you're supervised for 3,000 hours, 1.5 years. I struggle there, members, because we know how medicine works, and we know, like I've listed and can continue listing off the different specialties and the board requirements, we know that there's different complexities to medicine, and we know that when you have a physician, that their residencies are different lengths and involve different things based on that complexity. And yet, when we look at Senate Bill 83,
Is there any further
Thank you,
discussion?
Madam Chair, I appreciate that. Do I need to ask to be excused just real quick when I need a drink of water? Is that appropriate? But when we look at Senate Bill 83, we're painting it with a broad brush, members. We're painting it with an extremely broad brush and not giving those specialties and that complexity of medicine the attention that it deserves. And I've been very open and transparent with the sponsors. I've been extremely open with their stakeholders of how this is just not how medicine works. And if PAs are really looking to have some of that independence that I think we're talking about, not pure independence, I agree, they don't hang their own shingle. You know, I would agree with that. But that we need to really give it its attention it deserves. And I've been hogging the mic and want to give other members the opportunity to speak, and so look forward to continuing this conversation.
No, he already has one.
Thank you. And I will.
Now you got two. Yeah, Gina.
Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just got a quick senatorial 5, please.
We'll take a senatorial 5. Senator Malika.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and I appreciate you giving that opportunity for a senatorial 5. I'm trying to remember where we were leaving off. I don't know if the great senator from Alamosa remembers. And
You were doing math, complicated math on hours.
yes, thank you, specialties. And so I think, you know, when we look at this, you know, we're painting with Senate Bill 83, we're painting it with a very broad brush, the number of hours that we require. You know, and you know, there's been conversations today and over the last several days on how to come up with that solution and how to make sure that we are capturing the complexity of specialties, how we are capturing, you know, the differences in those specialties and the training that is required in those specialties. And one of those conversations is to look at the Board of Medicine, and so, or the medical board. We know that the medical board licenses physicians. We know that they license physician assistants in the same realm. And I think it's appropriate to have the conversation to say, can the medical board be a part of determining the training that goes into these complex specialties? The medical board, consists of medical doctors, it consists of DOs, has, I believe, is it 2 PAs, I think, serve on the medical board as well, along with some members of the community as well. And so what has been talked about, members, is for the medical board to play a role in determining what those hours look like. Currently, it's 3,000 if you want to change specialties, 5,000 if you're new. And I think that that's a great floor, and I commend the sponsors for coming up with those hours. But again, like I listed before, there's a complexity to medicine, and there's a complexity to the training for medicine. And I think it's appropriate to have the medical board be a part of saying, hey, this, we need to look at these specialties and what goes into those trainings, and I think that that's something that I would like to offer. And at this time, I would like to offer.
There is an amendment forthcoming on the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L016?
Amendment L016 by Senator Mullica, amend the winter.
Senator Mullica.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, this concept was, we spoke about it, and I think this is an important piece, members, so I would ask for your attention. But we spoke with the sponsors about this, and what this amendment does is it does capture what was done in L018, but we're able to strike the chief medical officer language, and then
Members, if we could kind of keep it down just a little bit, please. Thank you.
and if you look, members, I'm not sure who has the amendment in front of them, but if you look on line 3, it specifically says physician group within the physician assistant's practice area. And I think that that is the goal for us, is to make sure that when there's that collaboration agreement, obviously it's with a physician, and I think that the sponsors agree with that piece, and it strikes the chief medical officer language, which the sponsors, I think, agree with. I don't think I'm misspeaking there. But adds in that practice area to make sure that that practice area is the same as who they have a collaboration agreement with. I think it makes sense. I think that it's good policy. I think that we're able to keep those parameters around it, making sure that the people and the patients of Colorado receive the best care. Members, I do ask for a yes vote on Amendment L016.
Senator Mullica,
Did
did
I
you
move it?
move the amendment? I don't think you
I thought
did.
I did, but if I didn't, I move Amendment L016.
Great. Senator Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I encourage a no vote on L016. We have worked very hard to make sure that we are ensuring that physicians are involved in this collaboration process. First of all, when you're a new PA, you have 5,000 hours of supervisory oversight. When you are switching, right now, there is no hourly requirement. We are actually enhancing that to 3,000 hours of supervisory oversight. And we have included that any collaborative agreement a physician has to sign off on. I have another amendment I'll allude to that strikes chief medical officer. So it really is a physician has to sign off on this collaborative agreement. Making it narrowed to the type of practice doesn't actually help solve for the problem that we have, where we have physicians assistants that are extremely talented, have gone through training, have done hours and hours and years of work, and by tethering them to a specific physician in a specific area of expertise, we're actually losing them for patient care. We're restricting them to patient care, and it's hurting access in our healthcare system. And that's why I encourage a no vote on L016.
Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And once again, thank you to the good senator from Thornton and his efforts and ability to stand up here and talk for quite a while. Thank you. Look, I was just going to highlight, I also rise in opposition to the amendment. And again, I'll refer to existing statute. A physician assistant licensed pursuant to this Article 240 who's practiced for at least 12 months and who is making a substantive change in his or her scope of practice or practice area is subject to the following supervisory requirements. This is in statute now. The physician assistant's first 80 working hours shall be supervised by a supervising physician who works at the same location as the physician assistant. Again, we're structuring this to say now it's going to be 3,000 hours of supervision in this practice change. This goes above and beyond what's in current statute. The physician assistant's primary supervising physician shall provide at least 20 hours of supervision, and the remaining hours will be provided by a secondary supervising physician who's designated by the primary supervising physician. Once again, no connectivity to area of expertise. The simple requirement is that that original primary physician has to work in the same building. The amendment, the bill we're offering strengthens that and will provide better outcomes. And a reminder that what we've established is just the floor. If a physician or a clinic or a hospital or a specialty wants to construct something more rigorous than the 3,000 hours, they're welcome to construct that, given the flexibility to build it to suit their, the patients that they serve. I once again stand in opposition and encourage a no vote to L016.
Senator Mullica.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just quickly, I think want to address some of the arguments we heard against it. I think obviously it doesn't say in current statute, it doesn't reference practice area, but there is obviously, I think, and we heard the concern is that it's a reference to the scope of a physician. And when that physician leaves, you lose that scope and you're not able to practice. And so even though it doesn't say same practice area, the PA is tethered to that physician based on their scope. And so it is the same concept, and I would again ask for a yes vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment 16. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The amendment fails. Senator Winter.
I've got it right here.
There is an amendment on the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment 20?
Amendment L20.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L020.
To the amendment.
This is in reflection to the concerns that we've heard from the good senator from Thornton about how we make sure we are including physician voices in these collaborative agreements. And so we are specifically saying it has to be a physician or a physician group. We already struck in a previous amendment employer, and we are now striking a chief medical officer to make it crystal clear that no collaborative agreement will exist in this state without physician sign-off. And we believe that this is a way to ensure patient safety, and I encourage a yes vote.
Is there any discussion? Senator Mullica.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, thank you to the sponsors for the work that they've done. Obviously, I think there's a concern with other pieces of it, but I think this is a piece that we had discussion on. We can't guarantee that chief medical officer is a physician, and not having that language in there, I think, is good guardrails. I wish we could have some more guardrails with what this amendment brought, but that amendment didn't get on, at least right now. And so I would support at least this guardrail being put up and striking, and do appreciate the work that the sponsors put in to make sure that at least we're trying to get some guardrails in there, and I would ask for a yes vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion for the body is the adoption of Amendment 20. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Senator Mollica.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members, we had spoken about the practice hours before, and I had brought up my concern when we're looking at the number of practice hours, and that we're painting what is a complex system of medicine with just kind of a broad brush of changing specialties with 3,000 hours. I think that is something that it concerns me when we know that there's a different amount of training and different things that go into the different specialties and the complexity of those specialties. And you know, we had also talked about that the medical board is the entity that licenses our physicians. You know, we know the medical board also licenses physician assistants. You know, and we talked about that, you know, for a physician to start practicing as a neurologist, that they would have to go through 7 years of residency post a 4-year medical school. And what we're saying here is that if a physician assistant wants to change specialties, they only have to go through 3,000 hours of supervision, and that's equivalent to 1.5 years. And then that specialty, that supervision could be in neurology, it could be in cardiology, it could be in one of those more complex areas of medicine that you know, from a physician standpoint, require longer residencies and longer trainings. And so, you know, we brought up the fact that there was a concept shopped, I think, and proposed to the sponsors and the stakeholders, saying, let's get the medical board involved. Let's have them, with their expertise, having physicians on board, having PAs on board, of really trying to determine what is the appropriate level of training when a PA wants to switch specialties. And with that, members, I offer and would like to offer move amendment.
Well, we have to wait until it lands on the desk, and there it is. Would the clerk please read Amendment L21?
Amendment L02.
Senator Mollica.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L021.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so that's what this amendment does, members. And when we're looking at L021, you know, it specifically focuses on bringing in the medical board. There was a previous version of this that actually was creating a subcommittee of physicians and physician assistants, equal numbers, to bring a recommendation to the medical board of what those hours should look like. That I think there was a concern that might drive a fiscal note. And you know, if I could just read it, I'm not sure if everyone has a copy of it, but if you look at that, it says, notwithstanding the number of practice hours required for a physician assistant to be supervised by a physician as set forth in subsection 2 of this section, the medical board pursuant to section 12-240-1065 shall set the number of hours of supervision, which hours shall not be set in an amount fewer than 5,000 hours for a physician assistant and 3,000 hours for a physician assistant changing practice areas. And so that's saying basically that the floor would be set at the 3 and the 5,000. And then adds a section 4. It says, within the existing resources, the board shall convene a stakeholder process that includes an equal number of physician and physician assistants to provide recommendations concerning the number of hours required to pursuant to section 12-240-114.5 for supervision of physician assistants by practice area. After consideration of the stakeholder recommendations, the board shall set the number of hours for supervision required for collaboration agreements pursuant to subsection 12-240-114.5. And so, members, It does exactly what I said it was going to do, which is through a public process, through a stakeholding process with the medical board, really looks at the complexity of medicine through the lens that it needs to be looked at and treated the way it needs to be treated, and really brings in the hours that are appropriate for those different specialties. I would ask for a yes vote.
Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in opposition to L21. Again, currently the requirement is 80 hours of direct supervision with a PA that wants to change practice area of specialty. What we are putting in legislation is 3,000 hours of supervision when you're trying to change practice areas. What we're trying to do exponentially increases the requirement on a PA to change their area of practice and expertise. I encourage a no vote on the amendment.
Senator Liston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I rise in support of L021. Let me tell you why, I mean, amongst many reasons. And once again, I'll say that I appreciate the good work that any PA does. I used to have a PA as my regular family, my personal physician, and he did a good job. But I think about my son-in-law. I think I've mentioned to you my son-in-law is what's called a neurootologist. He does skull-based surgery. I can't tell you how many hours it's been referenced, I think, by the good senator from Thornton and probably others, that what a doctor goes through. Just speaking for my son-in-law, is he went through medical school, which is I don't know how many hours. It's 4 years plus. Then to become a neurootologist, he went through 5 years of residency. Normally, residency for specialty practices or any practice is 3 years, but for a neurootologist, it's 5 years. Then he did another 2 years of fellowship above and beyond that before he ever started practicing. And when I say skull-based surgery, he did things like cochlear implants, or if you have cancer in your inner ear or whatever. He is highly, highly trained. I cannot imagine, I'm not knocking PAs at all, that you learn to do even with 3,000 hours under the good senator from Alamosa, 3,000 hours, and that's just for one particular area. So I strongly emphasize that for a PA or anybody else to try and do what these highly trained surgeons are attempting to do, whether it's a neurootologist or an orthopedic surgeon or a neurosurgeon, there's very, very much specialties. The surgeon who did his procedure on me, I can only imagine, say he was the only person in Colorado Springs that could do what he did. I was fortunate to get in. So I think that L021 is a good, sound amendment, and I urge your support of L021. Thank you very much.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment L021. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it, and the amendment fails. Senator Mullica.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. A little disappointed. I think that was an appropriate amendment, and an amendment to include the medical board and the expertise that they bring, rather than just having an arbitrary number in statute requiring training. I think when we include medical professionals and PAs and physicians in that realm, I think that overall that's better for Colorado. And so I think that that's what we were trying to do with that amendment, and wish it could have gotten on. But, I think, one of the big things, members, that we have heard about is rural Colorado and the issues that have faced rural Colorado. And, we heard in committee that 13% of the PAs in Colorado are practicing in rural Colorado. And there is, I'll say it again, there is an issue. The system is broken when it comes to our rural healthcare system. And, I want to give credit to the Good Senator from Westminster again, because I think she's focused on that. And she's actually passed a bill last year focusing on that with Senate Bill 22-172, to put those resources into rural Colorado to really try to solve that and to try to help individuals in those communities go to school to be medical professionals. And that may be nurses or respiratory therapists or PAs. But no matter what it is, we know that that's the solution to this, or one of the main solutions to this, is that we have to have those communities growing their own. We know that when those communities have their members go through these schools and become practitioners, that they have a better chance of staying in those communities and living in those communities and practicing in those communities. And, and I want to make a point here, and obviously, again, give credit to the Good Senator from Westminster, because I think she is focused on that and is bringing legitimate solutions. But we have a neighboring state that they consider, that the Physician Assistants Organization considers optimal practice, and it's Utah. And you can go to their website, and they have a map, and I think there's 3 states that have optimal practice, and one of our neighboring states just happens to have that optimal practice. And I just mentioned 13% of PAs in Colorado practice in the rural setting. Do we want to, when we have a state that has optimal practice, and you look at the number of physician assistants that are practicing in that rural setting, it's only 10%. And so I bring that up because, I think that there has been a concept put out there that if we get to optimal practice, or if we have some, if we allow for some, more, only a collaboration agreement, not supervision, that we're going to, essentially solve our rural healthcare issue. And we should, and again, we should focus on areas, and we should limit burden and do everything we can to get these providers in there. But I do want to focus on the fact that we have an optimal state that has less percentage of their PAs practicing in a rural setting than we do in Colorado. And I pulled this from the AAP website, and it's in front of me right here. And it gives you data, it gives you the number of PAs that we have, over 3,850 PAs practicing in our state, and kind of the percentage breakdown of specialties and what type of practice. But a number that stuck out to me was at the bottom in Colorado. It says 73.3% of Colorado PAs would choose their career over again. So 3 out of 4 PAs in Colorado would choose to be a PA again. And look, U.S. News ranks being a physician assistant as the 4th best career in the entire country. And what physician assistants bring to the healthcare system is immeasurable. What the work that they do, the care they give to our patients is great. Again, I think where the argument comes in, though, is one, is physician-led care the best care possible? I think I'm making an argument that physician-led care and that expertise that physicians bring is. But I also want to bring in the fact that when we look at PAs and we're talking to PAs, that the data and the studies are showing us that they actually enjoy being a PA, which I think is a good thing. And these studies and these questions are being asked in what we have in our current environment. And so in the current environment, 73.3% of PAs in Colorado would choose to be a PA again. And I think that speaks numbers, and I think it speaks numbers that U.S. News ranks being a physician assistant as the 4th best profession in the entire country. And I think that speaks volumes as well. I think it speaks volumes to what PAs do, but I also think it speaks volumes to the profession and what a good profession it is. And I think that there are areas to fix. I just think that we're really bringing a butcher knife to a problem where we could really be solving this with a scalpel and really addressing some of the problems that I think are legitimate. And so, I don't know if the sponsors want to speak, but I'm gonna urge a no vote on Senate Bill 83 in its current form.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is for the adoption of Senate Bill 83. Are there any no votes? All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Any noes? The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion before the body is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the committee will rise and report. You caught me off guard.
The Senate will come to order. Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee has heard a number of bills under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your Committee of the Whole begs leave to report it has had under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof, and makes the following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 60 is amended. Senate Bill 144 is amended. Senate Bill 83 is amended, passed on second reading, and ordered, engrossed, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1004 is amended, passed on second reading, and ordered, revised, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the report.
The motion is the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, to excuse, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 60 is amended. Senate Bill 144 is amended. Senate Bill 83 is amended, passed on second reading, and ordered, engrossed, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1004 is amended, passed on second reading, order revised, and passed on the calendar, placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Committee reports.
March 7, 2023, the Committee on Local Government and Housing, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following House Bill 1139 be amended as follows, and as so amended be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation, with the recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. March 7, 2023, Mr. President, the Committee on Finance has had under consideration and has had a hearing on the following appointments and recommends that the appointments be placed on the consent calendar and conferred members of the Colorado Lottery Commission for terms expiring July 1st, 2026. Stanley Henry Podolsky III of Fort Collins, Colorado, to serve as a certified public accountant, reappointed. Janelle Quick of Pueblo, Colorado, to serve as a public member, appointed. March 7, 2023. The Committee on Finance, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1111 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. House Bill 1121 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. Senate Bill 69 be amended as follows, and as so amended be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. House Bill 1141 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation, and with the recommendation that it be placed on the consent calendar. House Bill 1087 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation, and with the recommendation that it be placed on the consent calendar. House Bill 1106 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation, with the recommendation it be placed on the consent calendar. March 7, 2023, the Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bill 150 be amended as follows, and as so amended be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation, and with the recommendation it be placed on the consent calendar. House Bill 1030 be amended as follows, and as so amended be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation.
Message from the governor.
February 17, 2023, to the Honorable Colorado Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, pursuant to the powers conferred upon me by the Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado, I have the honor to designate, appoint, and submit to your consideration the following member of the Colorado Commission on the Aging for a term expiring September 1st, 2025, Christine Vogel of Lafayette, Colorado, to serve as a director of an area agency on aging and as a Democrat, occasioned by the resignation of Robert Held, a Republican of Aurora, Colorado. Appointed sincerely, Jared Polis, Governor.
Health and Human Services.
February 3rd, 2023, to the Honorable Colorado Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, pursuant to the powers conferred upon me by the Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado, I have the honor to designate, appoint, and submit to your consideration the following members of the Medical Services Board for a term expiring July 1st, 2026. Idalia Massa Carroll of Arvada, Colorado, to serve as a resident of the 7th Congressional District, a Democrat with knowledge of medical assistance programs. Appointed sincerely, Jared Polis, Governor.
Health and Human Services. Announcements. Senator Colker.
Thank you, Mr. President. After consulting with the minority leader, majority leader, and the president, I will be gone on Thursday. Been excused to not be here on Thursday. Thank you.
Senator Colker will be marked as excused on Thursday. Further announcements. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Seeing no further announcements, I move that the Senate adjourn until tomorrow, Wednesday, March 8th at 9 a.m.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Guess the noes have it. Just joking. The ayes have it. The Senate will adjourn until 9 a.m. Wednesday, March 8th, 2023.